Hello again, second through fourth grade. We are going to continue this Thursday, October 1st, with part 2 of our book, The Old Woman Who Named Things. Once again, our author is Cynthia Rylant. She is the one who gives the story words, and our illustrator is Catherine Brown, and she's the artist of the story, so she draws all the pictures. Before we start on part 2, I would like you to make sure that you have this sheet out in your packet. It's called The Old Woman Who Named Things Part 2. Yesterday in your video, you did Part 1. If you turn it over, you'll see Part 2. Please grab that out and grab a pencil because we're going to be learning and writing at the same time. So go ahead and do that. Pause your video if you need to. All right, on number 1, part of our goals are to recall important information. And we always want to make sure that we remember what's going on in a story before we continue with it. So on your paper, number 1 says recall. That is another fancy word for remember. So what I want you to do on this sentence starter, I want you to fill in on the lines what you remember about the story from yesterday. So go ahead and take time to do that. I remember, and write down your answer. You may pause your video while you're writing. Go ahead. All right, I'm going to begin with a page that we left off on yesterday just to jog our memory about what was happening at the very end of our reading. So here goes. That night, as the old woman plumped up the pillows on Roxanne, which is her bed, she thought about the puppy. It was a very nice puppy, she thought. It was a very pretty puppy, she thought. But it couldn't stay. If it stayed, she would have to give it a name, and it could never last as long as Franklin or Fred or Betsy or Roxanne. She might outlive it, and she didn't want to risk that. She didn't want to outlive any more friends. She would just keep telling it to go home. Every day the shy brown puppy came to the old woman's gate. Every day she fed it and told it to go home. Always it went away, and always it came back the next day. This went on for many months. The puppy got bigger and bigger until soon it wasn't a puppy anymore. It was a dog. And it was still a dog with no name. In all this time, the old woman had gotten a new dresser that she had named Bill, a new wheelbarrow that she had named Francine, and a new concrete pig for her garden that she had named Bud. But the dog she faithfully fed at her gate every day still had no name. Since it had no name, the old woman didn't have to worry about outliving it, and she thought herself pretty clever in all this. Then one day, the shy brown dog did not come to the old woman's house. She sat in Fred, her car, and watched the gate all day long, but the dog never came. The old woman felt sad. The next day again, the dog did not come. The old woman drove Betsy around town looking for the dog, but she did not find it. The old woman felt even sadder. And you'll have to excuse me, I called Fred her car, but I meant her chair. Betsy's the car. The following day, when still the dog did not come, the old woman knew she had to do something. She picked up her telephone and called the dog catcher. "Have you caught any shy brown dogs?" the old woman asked the dog catcher. "We've got a whole kennel full of shy brown dogs, ma'am," said the dog catcher. "Was yours wearing a collar with its name on it?" "No," said the old woman sadly. and she hung up the telephone. Okay, here is where I have to pause so that we can work on our other skill, and that is making text-to-self connections. One more time, a connection is something, a thought perhaps, that we have when we are reading, and it helps us understand the book. Text-to-self means something in the story that reminds you of something that's happened to you. So I'd like to share with you a quick text-to-self connection. I once had a dog named Penny, and she really liked to run all over the place. In fact, when I lived in Mission, my first year of teaching, she got off her leash and she was running all down Main Street, and I had to stop my car in the middle of the road to pick her up. It was very dangerous. But my connection to this book is that once I took Penny to Rapid City to visit my family, and my mom took her for a walk, and they thought that it might be a good idea to let her off her leash. It wasn't a very good idea. She got loose, and she really liked to chase cars, maybe even more than to run. She found some cars on the road, and she started chasing them, and she was so fast they couldn't catch up with her. So I was really sad to find out that they kind of lost my dog. So what I needed to do is I went to the Humane Society, or the Pound, and I went and I asked if she was there, and it turns out that someone had picked her up and they brought her to their house, and she was waiting for me to go and get her. So I took their address down, and I went and I picked up my dog. And so what I want you guys to do is I'd like you to grab your sheet of paper, The Old Woman Who Named Things Part 2, because I want you to skip number 2 really quickly and look at number 3, okay? It says text-to-self connection right here, and I want to show you what I've done so that you can make a connection at the end of the book, okay? I wrote down the exact words here on my whiteboard. So I filled in the blanks saying, when the old lady went to the pound, or when she called in, it reminded me of when I had to pick up my dog Penny from the pound. So her and I are connected because we both went and visited the Humane Society, or the Pound, sometimes they call it. So I'm connecting to her. I'm feeling the same things that she is. All right, let's go ahead and move on. The old woman sat and thought about about the shy brown dog who had no collar and no name. Wherever it was, no one would know that it was supposed to come to the old woman's gate every day, that she was supposed to feed it and tell it to go home every day, and that things were always supposed to be this way. The shy brown dog had no collar and no name, and no one would ever be able to know these things about it. The old woman made a decision. She locked up Franklin and drove Betsy to the dog catcher's kennel. She said to the dog catcher, "I've come to find my dog." He asked her what color it was. "It's brown," she said. He asked her how old it was. "About a year old," she said. But then he asked her what its name was. The old woman thought a moment. She thought of all the old dear friends with names whom she had outlived. She saw their smiling faces and remembered their lovely names, and she thought about how lucky she had been to have known these friends. She thought what a lucky old woman she was. Okay. We're going to hop back onto our paper, and this time we will do number 2. We'll make a prediction. I want to know what you think that she might name her dog. So we might have some clues in the book to help us figure out what she might name it, but maybe not too. So if you would pause your video here, I want you to fill in this blank. I think she might name her dog. What do you think? Go ahead and pause your video and fill in that blank. All right, let's find out what she named it. She thought what a lucky old woman she was. My dog's name is Lucky, she told the dog catcher. Did anybody guess that? He led her to a big yard full of white dogs and black dogs and brown dogs. The old woman looked and looked and looked, and finally she saw her own shy brown dog sitting beside a gate. The dog was looking at Betsy parked in the driveway. I think he might have recognized it. The old woman called out, "Here, Lucky!" And at the sound of her voice, the shy brown dog came running. From that day on, Lucky lived with the old woman, and he always came when his name was called. It turned out that Betsy didn't make all dogs sick. He seems to enjoy it. And Fred was happy to allow a dog to sit on him. Franklin really didn't mind a little dog hair. There's Franklin right there. And every night, Roxanne was sure to make herself plenty wide enough for a shy, brown, lucky dog and the old woman who named him. There's Roxanne, the bed. The end. All right, we've got one last task on our worksheet to do, and that has to deal with theme. So I'm going to turn my easel around. Okay, I want us to remember what theme is. Okay, the theme of a story is a message or a lesson that the author is trying to tell us with the words that he or she writes. Some themes include these right here. We've been working with kindness, friendship, bullying, and never give up. Okay, so an example for our theme would be, I think the theme for Oliver Button is never give up, because the book says he practiced and practiced. So there's my theme that I thought it might be. And then here's my reason for my thinking. We always need to make sure that we provide a reason as evidence. Why do we think those things? I want to know. Okay? So on your sheet, and I'm really quickly going to put this back. Yours says, do you think friendship or bullying is the best theme for this book? You'll fill in the blanks here, and I'm going to give you a quick example of what I thought a theme for this book might be. You'll choose between friendship or bullying. Here's what I thought it might be, different from yours. I think a theme for the book is kindness, because, and here's where I'm filling in the blank, because the old woman fed the dog and she even adopted him in the end. And I thought that that was very kind of her to do. So I think maybe the author is trying to teach us a lesson in kindness. Okay, what do you think the theme of the book could be? Do you think it might be friendship? And why? Or do you think that maybe it's bullying? Why do you think that? All right, that is the end of our lesson today. Thanks for meeting with me. Make sure you check in Schoology. Finish part 1 if you haven't with the video. And also finish part 2 of my read aloud. This right here. Thanks, guys. I'll see you Friday.